This is a native Power BI visual, and you may know it better as the line and clustered column chart. It's been modified to resemble a multi-tier column chart following international business communication standards. And it has the benefit of being able to quickly see what the past year and the actuals is, as well as forecast data, while also being able to see the difference between the past year as a flat value and a percentage value. This is really beneficial because end users can see the data that they need very quickly. And even though this is a native visual in Power BI, it is a little bit complicated to make. So I'll be walking you through how to do this today. And be warned, it does take 27 measures. Let's dive right in and get those measures and the data in under 2 minutes. Now, in order to actually do this, you are going to need the February 2024 version of Power BI. And the reason for that is that we're going to use two things that you need from this desktop version, which is going to be DAX query view and of course, overlapping bars. In order to make this as easy as possible, I've elected to actually just put all of the things that you need inside the description of this video. So if you scroll down on this video itself, you'll actually have the data set that we're going to use. It's only 12 rows, and all you need to do is select it, copy it, Control-C, and then go to a fresh Power BI report, go to Enter Data, hit Enter once, and then press Control. I'm going to rename this into something like IBCS data, and I'm going to click on Edit. Once I do, it's going to take me to Power Query, and all that I need to do is just click Split Column by Delimiter. Make sure you have comma selected and hit OK. Once it does that, it'll separate all of the columns, and then I'm going to go to the Transform tab and click Use First Row as Headers twice. This ensures that there's no, complications when splitting the data, and it just looks perfect. I'm going to go back to Home, Close and Apply, and that's all we need to do for the data itself. Once the data's in, go back to the description, scroll down a little bit more, and copy this big chunk of text. This is all of the measures that you're going to need, and we do need to do one small thing before we can use it. Copy the measures and then paste them into something like Notepad++, where you can use the Control-H function after selecting these dots and squares in order to modify them. We actually need to do this because YouTube simply doesn't let me put greater and less than operator in the actual report. So select the black dots and make sure that it's less than, and just click on Replace All. You have to unselect in selection if you want it to affect everything. And once you've done that, find the squares and you hit Control-H again and replace them all with greater than. Once you do this, then you should actually have all of the data that you need in order to actually add this to Power BI. So just copy this, go to the DAX query view in your report and just paste it here. And once you do, you'll have the option to update the model and add new measure. Once you do this, then it will actually just automatically add this measure to your model. So it's the fastest way to build everything that you need. Now that I've clicked all of these buttons, you'll actually see that all of these measures are actually numbered. And the reason for that is that's the way that I'm going to go through them. So this is basically everything that you need. And just to, reference it quickly, the data itself is going to show the month number, the month name, 2022 data, which is going to represent past year information, 2023 data, which is going to represent this year's information. In this scenario, it's going to be mid-October probably. And then 2023 predictions. Of course, in order to actually identify this, the measures AC, which represents actuals, is going to be the sum of 2023 data. Forecast is going to be 2023 predictions, and past year is going to be 2022 data. So now we're just going to start building the visual. Select the line and clustered column chart, and we're going to start adding things to it. So of course, we're going to actually use the month as the x-axis, and we're going to add AC, PY, and FC to the column y-axis. Now this makes sense. This is what we're actually going to use in order to start with the base, and we're just going to immediately open up the formatting and make sure that in the columns, we're going to select the AC as black. We're going to select the black 20% lighter. We're going to select past year as white with a border, and we're going to make sure that FC is blue, light blue with a dark blue border. Some of you have may seen some of these steps in my previous video, but bear with me, it's going to be very different very soon. What we need to do next is just make sure that we go back to the series, select all, and then after you select all, you click on the layout and you click on the overlap function. Once the overlap function is on, you can set the space between series to be, say, 50, and now it will start to overlap. You can actually see that currently the black, which is the actuals, is behind the past year, and that's just the order of things. So if you just put AC in front of past year, that makes sense. You can also see that right now the months don't seem properly ordered, and that's just because the month itself needs to be ordered by the month number. So we're going to go to the month column, click on this button to sort by month number. Sometimes it doesn't, it's like automatically apply. So you have to close the month out of the x-axis and then put it back in. And now it's perfectly fine. So now we've done this, what we're going to do next is go to the second number of, items. What we're actually going to do is we're going to put in another column as the max value. The max value right now is basically just identifying which value represents the highest point for each month. When there is a forecast, it's looking between the forecast and the past year. And when there isn't a forecast, it's looking between the actuals and the past year. Now, the reason that we're actually adding this as well, even though it kind of blocks everything out, is that we're actually going to use this in order for us to be able to show the labels above the actual charts. Now, if we just added labels, I'm going to remove this quickly so you can see this. So if we just added data labels, you'll actually see that, okay, so this might be a little bit harder to see, but you will actually see that a lot of the labels kind of obscure the background, which is not something that I want. I want all of the labels to be shown at the top. And in order to do this, this is one of the easiest ways that I found. So I'm going to put in a max value, and you can actually see that the max value label is always at the top. And if you go into the data label selection, go to all of the different series except for max value and turn them off. Now, once they're off, one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select columns and make sure that the max value series, the color is just set to white and 100% transparent. Now you can't see it at all. And then we can actually go into the data labels once again and add some more information. So now in the value section, I can open it up and I can actually put in, for example, the max value as the max value as the item that I want. And I can also turn on the detail, and the detail I'm going to put in the minimum value. Now the minimum value is basically the reverse of max value. So you can actually see it as identifying the smallest point in each month. And by doing this, what I'm able to do is I'm able to show both the highest value and the smallest value for each month. I actually found out that I was in the wrong series, so I had to actually go back and turn off the FC. FC isn't even on, so honestly, I don't like the fact that you can still navigate these options, but going back to the max value, I turned the detail on and I put the minimum value in here. Now, this is great. This is exactly what I'd like to show. For now, maybe I'm going to put the number of display units to just automatic. That's okay. We'll just leave this as is. But the one thing that I do want to do is I want to actually change the colors, because I can do that with the conditional formatting property here. And that's what we're going to use the number 3 measures for. So measure number 3, title color bottom. If the minimum, if the minimum value is blank, then it's going to represent either black or gray or blue, or so I'm going to just set this color in. I'm going to go into conditional formatting, click on the field value. We'll look up colors and I'll select color bot. And now, since I've set this color, you can actually see that the lower color is either gray or black, or on this side, blue, depending on what is the smaller color. Now I'm going to do the same for value, and in value, I'm going to just make it bold so it's easier to see, and also select the conditional formatting for field value to be color top. Now there's conditional formatting rules, and in the color top, it's basically if the value is not, it's like November or December, if it's not a forecast month, then if the difference between the past year and the current year is greater than 0, it'll be black. Otherwise, it'll be gray. If it is in a forecast, it's like month, If the difference is greater than 0, it'll be blue, otherwise it'll be black. And this works really well for us, and you can actually see that now we have a differentiation between what item is at the top and what item is at the bottom, and there it's also color coded. So this is just something that I thought was nice to add. It's not actually part of IBCS as far as I can tell, but it works nicely for me. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to measures number 4, which is going to be the ACPY max. Now this is, okay, so if I just add this as it's like another column, you'll actually be able to very quickly see what it is. And it's the max value for this time period. So if I actually use this and I click on ACPY max, the reason that I need it is because I'm going to use this to modify this charts. What we're trying to do, of course, is we're trying to get this chart to show multiple different charts at the same time. And that means that the y-axis actually does need to be formatted to be a little bit bigger than what it currently is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the y-axis. I'm going to set the minimum to 0 and the maximum as a function. The function is going to be number 4, y-axis max. Y-axis max is basically just, the maximum value of this chart multiplied by 4.8. I've used 4.8 because I think it's just a good, it's like number out of everything that I've tested. You can use something else if you want, but just bear with me for now. Now we've actually placed in the y-axis and made this a little bit smaller. What we're going to do next is we're going to look at delta py. Now delta py we already used previously in one of the conditional formatting, but it's basically looking at if forecast is not blank, then if it's not in the forecasting months, look at the actual subtracted by the past year. If it's in the forecast months, look at forecast minus the past year. And what we're going to do is we're going to add delta py line. And this is basically where we're going to show the difference between these two items. In my previous video, we just placed them as error bars right on top of each other. But since we want to separate them, I'm actually taking the max value of this, it's like all of the columns here, and we're going to multiply that by 2.3. Once again, this is something that I've just arbitrarily used because it fit nicely for me. But if you wanted to, to move things around, then you'd have to change this value into something that more suits your design. Now I'm going to take delta py line and put it in the y-axis. And now you can see this is kind of going to be the base of where I put in the delta bars. I actually have multiple lines because I need a line for each different color that I'm going to use. So if we actually go back and consider this, here I actually needed to do the same thing where I needed to create a different error bar for each color. Now, because I'm going to use 3 different colors, I need 3 different lines. So we have delta py line 2 and delta py line 3, and I'm going to put all of these in. Once I'm there, let's start, it's like with the formatting. Let's make sure that the data labels for these lines are off. And then let's go into the lines formatting and make sure that they're all, the colors are all just gray. We'll just pick the mid gray here, which is fine. And we'll also make sure that the stroke width, it's just 1 pixel. I find that it just looks nicer this way. Now, once we're here, we can go back to the formatting and start adding error bars. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the delta py line is selected. This is going to be our positive value. And you can see that the first measure here, the next 4 measures that we have in the number 5 category is delta py line negative AC, and delta py line negative FC, and so on and so forth. So basically what this means is that I have delta py line positive AC. So this represents positive values in the actual. So this is going to be green. Negative AC is going to be red. And then I need to have a negative FC and a positive FC in order to make sure that the forecast data also has the correct error bars. So if we go back here, we're going to just start delta py line. Make sure that we're going to use delta py line positive negative AC. That's fine. We'll use that as the lower bound. And if we put it in here, it doesn't always show immediately because you have to enable the error bar. And now you can see that it's actually showing a very, very large amount. This isn't exactly what we want to see. And the reason that it's showing like this is because now that we've added lines, there's a secondary y-axis on this side. We also need to make sure that the secondary y-axis has a minimum set to 0 and the maximum set to the y-axis amount that we used earlier. So once that's done, now you can see it looks a lot more like what it should. We can also make sure that in the secondary y-axis, you can turn off titles. And for the y-axis, you can also turn off the titles and values, because the actual values, once you get to the error bars, are no longer relevant. So once I've done this, I'm going to go back to the error bars and make sure that this is red. So I'm going to go to the bar. I'm going to make the bar color just a red color, make the width 10, which is the maximum width. And I'm also going to make sure that the marker shape is none and that there is no border. This just makes a nice clean bar. Unfortunately, this is as big as the bar can go, but it's just fine. We're then going to select the error labels and make sure that the error labels are going to be the relative numeric value. And this relative numeric value is basically going to say that this is how much the difference is from the base, which is of course this line here. The reason that works is because this actual value that we've used, which is, I believe, negative AC, is actually showing, if we're not in the forecast time, then it's the difference between AC and PY. And that's, it's like difference just added to this line. So if that's negative, it'll show up here. The other ones are, of course, it's positive, and if it's in the forecasting time period. So it's basically just taking the difference of these two, it's like minimum and maximum values, and just adding them to this line. We're going to keep going, and we're going to go to the next error bars that need to be made, which is going to be the delta PY line 2. Here, I'm going to add the green lines. And to do that, I just need to put in delta PY line positive. We'll put that in upper bound. We'll enable it and make sure that we, it's like put in good colors, make sure that it's green. You can just select any random green. It really doesn't matter too much. Make sure the width is 10. Make sure the marker is set to none and the border is 0. Turn on the error labels. Open them up and make sure that the color is going to be, the label format is going to be relative numeric. And now you have all of the positive values. If you want, you can have the actual error labels match the series color, which will just make them gray, but you can also just select them and match them to be the same color as the bars. So let me just go back to delta PY line 1 and do the same. So error labels, we're going to make them red. Great. Now for delta PY line 3, what we do here is we have the values for positive, it's like a negative FC. Now, if you actually want to have, it's like two different values, you can do this, but in a lot of cases, you don't necessarily have to do this. You can actually put just this value, but if you do just have this one value in here, there is a problem. So let me just show you very quickly what I mean. Let's say that I am just commenting this out and just putting the difference between the line and delta PY. If I do this and I put this value into, it's like here, and I enable it, then you'll actually see that it actually shows for both of these things. But unfortunately, it doesn't work properly because now it's showing everywhere. And even worse, when I put in the error labels, it actually doesn't show above or below. And in order to do this, you actually need to, it's like do it slightly different. Now I'm going to turn the error labels off for a second and make sure that the negative FC goes back to what it was. And what you need to do is you need to make the negative FC and the delta PY line positive FC to be the upper and lower bounds. If sometimes you might need to switch them around, because if the error labels are like, you turn the error labels on and both of the labels are inside the bar, then you have to make sure that they're switched around. So negative needs to go below and positive needs to go above. And now you can see that the labels are actually showing as intended. This is fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the bar dark blue, make the width 10 again, make sure there's no, it's like marker, make sure there's no border, and make sure that the color matches the actual bar. And there you have it. That shows the series of the delta from past year to the actuals. And that's section 5. Now there's only section 6 and section 7 left, so bear with me. We're going to add a couple more lines in order for us to be able to actually use them and show the percentage difference. Now, the percentage difference is going to be a little bit more difficult to pull off, and you'll see why in just a second. Delta PY percentage is the division of the actual delta PY by past year. So what is the difference of this by last year? And that will give us the percentage. And of course, in order to show them, we have their own separate lines. This is simply going to be the maximum of the column multiplied by 3.8. Still an arbitrary number, but it works well within this. There's going to be 3 lines that we're adding, so we're just going to do that right here. 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to go and format them as we need. Make sure that all of the lines are just grayed out, and make sure that the stroke width is 1. Go to data labels, and then make sure that for these new lines, we're going to turn off the labels. And once that's done, we can go to error bars and we can just start applying. So we'll go to delta py line 1 first, and we'll start with these 3 different. So there's 3 different lines that we actually need to add. There's the line positive AC, which is basically if the value of, it's like of delta py percent is greater than 0, then it'll be green. So it'll just be this extra line plus that value. If it's negative, then it'll be this line plus that value, and just show that for the red lines. And then we just have FC, which is just going to, if it's in the forecast range, then it's just going to show this value without any conditions, because that's all we need to do. So for line 1, we're going to put, let's the positive ACs in the upper bound, and make sure that the bar is enabled and that the bar is green. Width is 10. Marker shape, oh, pardon me. So now because we're doing percentage differences, we're actually not going to make the width 10. We're going to make the width 2 and make the marker shape a square. This will identify it as different from the actual flat values and should give a percent difference. We're gonna not turn on error labels, because if we turn on error labels, unfortunately, it's not actually going to show us the values that we need. This is going to show us 72,000 and something extra, which is the value of the y-axis here. And that's not what we want to show. So unfortunately, we have to use a different workaround, because error labels does not provide you with the option to add extra values that you want to show instead of the error label value. So we're going to ignore that for now. Go to delta py line 2, and in delta py line 2, we're going to turn the negative AC values as the upper bound. And then we're going to just turn on, make sure the bar itself is going to be red, width is going to be 2, marker shape is going to be a square. Great. And then for the percentage line 3, we're just going to turn this on. Options is going to be enabled. And then just for the upper bound, we're going to put in delta py line FC. Make sure that the bar is blue, width is 2, marker shape is a square. And that's fantastic. But unfortunately, of course, we have to do one additional thing, which is going to take us to the 7th category of measures. And in order to do this, what we actually need to do is add one more column. So I'm going to add this column here, delta py percentage values. Delta py percentage values is actually a value that identifies where these values are. And it's actually built in this way so that if delta py is greater than 0, it's just going to be, it's like this line plus the space. So you can see it's actually exactly where these green lines are. But if it's negative, it's going to give a little bit of space. The reason that it's done this way is simply because of the fact that if we actually put in the value to be above, we can put the labels to be inside. But if it's inside, it'll actually run into some problems. If you try to resize it, the values will simply disappear because these values can't fit inside the actual bar. So we actually have to do it like this, which is a strange workaround, but it works. So now we're going to go to the columns, select the delta py percentage values, make the color white, make it transparent, 100%. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to data labels. The data labels we're selecting is, of course, for this _7 delta py percentage values. And we're going to add this value, which is simply the delta py divided by the py, which is just delta py percent, and multiply that by 100 to actually give the percentage value. So here we go to the data labels, and we're going to go to the value area, make sure it's going to be the delta py percentage label, make sure that value has no display units, has no decimals, and now that's going to be a percent, it's like difference. It's just a flat value, and because of that, it's a little hard to see. That's okay, but this essentially is going to be what we use. You can also, of course, if you want, use the conditional formatting that I've added here, delta py percent label color. And this is going to basically, if you use this, it's simply going to show green, red for positive and negative, and for the forecast, it's going to show blue. Now, there's not that much more that we need to do. We need to fix the title, the legend, and maybe the spacing. So one thing you can see is that the values here, the labels, are a little bit shifted. And that actually has to do with the fact that the column itself has these two values, which are the labels at the very end. So you can actually sort this by just taking, for example, max value to be between PY and AC, as well as delta PY. So if you actually do it like this, in this order, you can see that now, even though the bars have shifted a tiny bit, it's still okay. It still works very well for the purpose. And you can even do AC, it's like up top if you want. But doing it this way makes all of the values that are for, it's like the max value difference here and the values for the percentage difference, it's like actually show up in the middle. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we want to add the series labels. So we can turn on the series labels here. And this actually helps us in order to identify the values that we want to. So in order to actually make this make sense, first we're going to make this exist on the left. I don't like setting the maximum width to be auto because it kind of takes too much space in my opinion. So I'm going to set the value to be 6. Maybe I'll set it to be 5. And what we can do is that for almost all of these, we're going to turn them off. But all of the ones that are numbered, so delta PY line 2, 3, and delta line 2 and line 3, we're going to turn off. And in order to modify the actual values here, we just need to find delta PY line and delta PY percentage line and change the names. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the line in the build a visual area here, and I'm going to call this delta PY. If you hit the Windows key and the semicolon, you can open up the emoji window, and I'm going to click on this button right here and select this value, which is going to be delta PY. That's all I need to do. I'm going to copy this as well. And you can see that delta PY is actually changed. You can't see very well, so I'll make it larger in just a second. Yeah, okay. So delta PY, and now I'm going to change value number 6 to be delta PY percent. And now you can see that we have nice indicators that show this is delta PY percent and this is delta PY. I haven't figured out how to add series labels to the columns, but I think this is going to be, it's like sorted by the legend itself. So now let's go back to formatting. Let's go to the title. We'll call this IBCS column chart. Nice and simple. And then for the actual legend, the one thing that I found out is that it's really difficult to use the legend because we have a lot of transparent values, and the transparent values need to be in the middle here. So if we actually just turn on the legend, you can see that a lot of these values are here and there and everywhere, and it's really, really difficult to actually look at. So we're going to actually just turn this off and use a different workaround. We're going to go back to the title, and instead of the title area, we're going to click on subtitle. In the subtitle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Ctrl V again for what I selected. So I'm going to put delta PY percent, 2 spaces, delta PY, 2 spaces, and then I'm actually going to just go into the emoji again, so Windows and semicolon key, and I'm going to look for these 3 different balls. So you can actually just go into emojis and select, I believe it's the heart shape here for symbols, and if you scroll down here, you will be able to find a couple of different colors and shapes. Now there are some squares and there are some circles. I've elected to just use the circles, and these are the ones that I'm going to add, which is a blue circle, a white circle, and a black circle. So for blue circle, I can add forecast, space, space. For the white circle, I'll call it past year, space, space. For the black item, I'm going to call it actuals. And now you can see that a kind of pseudo, legend has been created. It still shows the relevant data, but now you have everything that you need. You can take this and you can just add some backgrounds and modify it, and you will end up with what we originally started with, which is this nice, lovely, it's like charts. The one thing to watch out for is that because the y-axis is actually calculated, it's totally fine if the values change. So if I select January, it's still going to show at this level, but you can actually see that it's just going to maintain the rows, and it actually works really great. There is a problem, however, because of the fact that we are currently using the function all selected in order to identify the maximum of the columns. As you can see here, max of all selected. If this slicer is going to be a just a table and it's cross filtering, it doesn't work well. So just be warned, this doesn't work well with cross filtering, but it works just fine with regular filtering. Okay, so that was basically everything. I really hope you learned a lot about, it's like how you can modify the existing charts to make something really different. I understand that a lot of this won't be for everyone. This is 27 different measures, and maintenance can be a little bit of an issue. But if you want something that works, that you can use immediately, this is a really good one to try out. Thanks for watching. Take care.